Hi, my name is Nancy Love, and I'm making this video on behalf of the Planet Peace Project, a fledgling organization that is hoping to change the world. I would like to speak about COVID, the population curve, and the birth-death ratio. You wouldn't believe how many people I've spoken to about this that have never heard of a population J-curve or a birth-death ratio. And it's about time everybody knew what those terms meant, because I personally believe that those two phenomena related to those two terms are the reason for COVID, as well as all the other worldwide problems, such as mass extinction of other forms of life and climate change. Yes, we have changed the world, but not for the better. Human beings have destroyed the eco-balance of an entire world. And for all I can tell, the world may very well be taken from them for that exact reason. The population J-curve is a statistical phenomenon that occurs when something happens exponentially, when something goes completely out of control, such as a pandemic. Well, how about an infestation? The infestation I'm referring to is that of Homo sapiens. And when I was born, hardly more than half a century ago, there were only 4 billion human beings on this world. Now there are approximately 8 billion. We've managed to double the population in only a handful of years. But it took us, I think, more than 100,000 years to get to 4 billion. It took several 100,000 years for Homo sapiens to get to 4 billion, yet we think we can handle a world in which we managed to double that population in less than a century. Oh yeah, and in the 1950s, 1960s, it was known internationally that approximately 25,000 people were going to starve to death every 24 hours, and nobody was doing much about that. And guess what? That statistic has remained alarmingly, tragically consistent. Every day, every revolution of this planet, approximately 25,000 people starve all the way to death. Usually more than half of them are children who never had one day of their life with enough. Not one day of their life did they have enough. And yet, still, humanity that thinks it's the smartest form of life on this world can't figure out how to feed its own babies. Duh. If you can't feed the ones you got, stop having new ones. I think everybody ought to stop having children until we feed the ones that will starve to death if we don't. Get a clue, humanity. Then we talk about the birth-death ratio. I had somebody, a highly intelligent, middle-aged professional with a fantastic job and a lot of professional respect, coming toward him. He didn't know what a birth-death ratio was. It's the ratio between the number of people born every day and the number of people who die every day, or monthly or yearly, depending on how the statistic is written. What we've got going right now is a situation in which approximately 250,000 people are going to be born every day, and approximately 100,000 people are going to die every day. And I was thinking about the birth-death ratio in late August, late September. I had some extremely upsetting conversations with some ex-Navy people that caused me to kind of turn on mankind, because when people you trust and should admire and should be able to feel good about turn out to be the worst thing that could happen to this planet, you start losing faith in everyone else as well. So I was thinking in a rather curmudgeonly and newly misanthropic way that until humanity drops that ratio to 100,000 born, 100,000 die, As long as we have 5 people born for every 2 that die every 24 hours, we will probably be living in a pretty messed up world because the world isn't able to take it. We are killing every single other thing on this world. Approximately one species is completely obliterated every day. We are killing approximately 300 whole species. Extinction is happening now on your watch. Grow up, show up, care about the world more than you care about your greed, your lust, and your status of having a big family. I am so disgusted with people who can't see beyond their own personal needs and live a life of service to mankind and the planet and other species hereupon. We absolutely have to evolve, and we must evolve now. Chronic war. War's been happening for hundreds of years. We can't figure out how to get along with each other for 5 minutes. So what? We go around breeding more of ourselves? No, not going to happen because COVID is just the beginning. Believe me. Only a few months after I was thinking, mankind needs to get that birth-death ratio together and lower the number of births to equal the number of deaths because we're not doing it right now. We're not feeding the ones we have. We're going to war against each other now. There are rampant challenges, climate change, pollution, disease. We're not doing it right now. How are we going to be doing it right with more than twice as many as we've already got? Well, it turns out then COVID comes and tries to help equalize things. Do you know the very, very first time I ever considered the birth-death ratio as it is related to global pandemics was when United States military intelligence people told me about SARS viruses in the 1970s. I had discussion with very, very powerful men back when I was a child and a teenager, and they informed me without any doubt in their voices that it was almost certain that during the course of my expected lifetime, if I lived out my, anticipated lifespan, that sometime during the course of my life there would be a global pandemic and it would be a SARS virus and it would start wiping out millions of people if we didn't drop the population birth-death ratio. You need to figure out what these terms mean. You need to start planning your family. And you need to start realizing that one of the most noble things you could possibly do is not breed right now. Why don't you take all the money that you would spend having yet another child of a species that can't figure out how to get along with itself for 5 minutes and invest it in the global organizations that exist right now that are dedicated to feeding the kids that are going to starve to death if you don't. This is Nancy Love. I used to want to be called the Planet Peace Woman. After all this time on this world and seeing so little progress, in fact, often the lack of progress in humanity, I now call myself Nancy Justifiably Outraged Love. Get some birth control, will you? More later. I'm just getting started here.